Ladies and gentlemen, 'tis the season for transfer rumors and club news, and today we've got what seems like a Santa sleigh amount of items to talk about. So welcome back, Quakes fans. My name's Kevin. Today I'm joined by Luis, and together we're the Quakesaholics.
Yeah, today we've got news on the MLS SuperDraft with the first confirmed arrival for the Quakes. We also have an update on the Quakes preseason plans, a combo of rumors regarding league structure changes, and a potential big money move.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So today was the MLS SuperDraft. This happens every year. The Quakes had 2 draft picks this time around. First one was the 11th overall pick in the first round, as well as a very later pick in the second round. This year, the Quakes decided to trade that 11th overall pick for $150,000 in GAM. This was with Houston, and that money will be split evenly over 2 years. As for who they actually ended up selecting in the second round, it was Jack Jasinski. This is a player that's coming from Princeton. He was there for 4 years. Before that, he was playing in MLS Next Pro with Philadelphia Union 2. I believe that was since 2020. And in terms of his more recent play time, he did start every game from 2023 through 2025 for Princeton. He's listed as center back, but some sites also have him as a right back and a left back. The official statement from the Quakes is that he is a defender, and in this sort of hybrid role not hybrid role, but hybrid system where we have center backs, elbow backs, as Luis likes to call them, and wing backs, I'm guessing he'll probably be playing as a right center back.
Yeah, I do think given his goal contributions that he did have during his time in college, having 4 goals and 22 assists over, I presume to be 4 years, is really good return for someone that's listed as a defender, especially the assists, right? 22 assists for a defender. Those are big numbers. Those are midfield numbers, right? So yeah, I think that he'd probably be a player that would be kind of in that elbow back position if I had to guess. He's pretty tall too, 6'1", 6'2". So for a defender and with Duan Jones' competition, I presume if I had to guess, he'd probably be like a Max Floriani, Reed Roberts kind of role, which I think also goes to show the kind of strategy that Quakes have approached these drafts with, with Daniel Mooney, who's been a great success for us, and Reed Roberts and Floriani having their great breakout seasons as well.
I mean, at this point, the Quakes probably have like 4 or 5 players in the past year or two that became regular starters having come out from the draft. This is a late round pick, so I also don't want to set the expectations too high that this is a player that must play in the first team. Most likely what's going to happen is he's going to be getting a good amount of minutes during preseason, and then depending on how he plays there, Bruce Arena will probably say, okay, maybe this is still a ton FC kind of player that needs further development. He is only 22 years old, like coming straight out of college. I think it's pretty normal for a player to, play MLS Next Pro. I think that's totally fine, and yeah, hopefully one day we can see him break into the first team, because I mean, you look at his accolades and his whole career as a soccer player, this is pretty promising. I think it's one of the most promising tales that we've had in quite a number of years. And I did mention preseason, and we did get an update for this year's preseason going into 2026. So the Quakes will once again be playing in the Coachella Valley Invitational. This has been going on for, I think, at this point, like 4 or 5 years, and it feels like it's really grown in the past 3 years with teams coming out all the way from the Eastern Conference. The dates for this will be February 7th to 14th, and in that stretch of about a week, the Quakes will be taking first on Charlotte, then Portland Timbers, and closing out against NYCFC. It's pretty cool to go to. It is a little bit far. There aren't a whole bunch of Quakes fans that go to that, but it is a great opportunity if you just want to catch a bunch of games, because it's not just the Quakes game that's going on each day. There's like 4 different games, 2 fields. You can catch a bunch of games, see a bunch of players. But yeah, in terms of expectations for those games, usually it's just playing a lot of rotations. I think it's like unlimited subs. Usually all the teams switch out basically all 11 players at halftime, and it's really just an opportunity to see a lot of the new faces that you've picked up and try out new systems and strategies. And hopefully we don't get another blowout loss like we did last year. That was pretty embarrassing, but I mean, in terms of results in preseason, they almost never translate into what you're going to see during the season.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I remember the last year, like you mentioned, had that blowout, but we did see some new things, some new faces, like, Jack Jasinski. Probably we'll see him, and a few other players from the Town FC maybe might get some minutes with the first team, kind of get comfortable. So yeah, definitely. And now that I'm graduated, hopefully I'll be able to make the trip down with you. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, hopefully. So yeah, looking forward to those ones, but that's all the info we have on that. And I guess all we have left is rumors. So I'll start off with the divisions rumor. This has been something that's been brewing for, honestly, it feels like a couple weeks, if not months at this point, that Tom Boger has been covering this. The rumor basically came out that the MLS is trying to change up how we structure matches. Instead of having 2 divisions, Eastern and Western conferences, where every team in that conference plays each other home and away. They want to switch to a divisions format. So what that would look like, as of right now, the rumors say that there would be 5 divisions, each one with 6 teams. And the structure would then be that every team in your division, you would play them once at home and once away every year. And then the remaining 24 teams would be 12 matches away, 12 matches at home. And so the positive in this is that it is a little bit more balanced when you talk about something like the Supporters Shield. Right now, maybe playing in the Eastern Conference is a little bit more tough than in the Western Conference, and that flip-flops year to year. And there are teams, for example, DC United, like we saw this year, which, not to be too disrespectful, but that's an easy 3 points, right? What this poses now is that the level of competition should be more balanced out for everyone, and also the travel, which does add up in a league like the MLS, where, traveling across the United States is the equivalent of like playing a full season of Champions League type of travel. So that is a positive, and I see why they're doing that. But what we got this week is the announcement of how the MLS envisions those divisions being split up. And in our case, as San Jose Earthquakes fans, I don't think this is positive news. Right now, we would be placed in division with Portland Timbers, Seattle Sounders, Vancouver Whitecaps, Real Salt Lake, and Colorado Rapids. That is a little bit awkward. Why is there just one California team playing with teams from Cascadia, from the Pacific Northwest, and from basically the Rockies? Mm-hmm. Those rivalries are being preserved, but San Jose is just being left out, while the SoCal teams, Galaxy, LAFC, San Diego FC, they're being grouped up with the Texas teams. So I think San Jose is kind of coming out of this as a loser. It's a little bit disappointing. I really thought that they would try to keep the 4 California teams together, but because of geography, it's a little bit hard to balance Cascadia, California, Texas, and the center of the United States. But that's the info so far. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, like you said, I think from a competitive aspect, I could see the argument for, having divisions in the first place. But yeah, I think just being a Quakes fan, I feel like time and time again, I feel like the MLS just doesn't really have respect for the Cali Clasico or for certain teams, especially teams that have been around for a long time. And I feel like this kind of feels like another example of that, because it just kind of shows where their priorities are. Obviously like El Tráfico and the amount of advertising and marketing that's been pushed for that, and with San Diego coming in as well, and the same goes with all the Texas teams. And it sucks, as a Quakes fan as well, traveling to what's going to happen to Stanford. Is that going to be every other year now? Same with the Levi's game. How would that work? So from the league aspect, I get where they're coming from, but yeah, I think it's a bummer to see how the divisions are actually being grouped up.
That's a good point about Stanford and Levi's that I hadn't actually thought about, is that if we do get a quote-unquote home game against one of those LA teams, they're going to move that game from PayPal to one of those other venues, which at that point, we've talked about this. The atmosphere for a Quakes fan, I think, definitely gets watered down in those instances. Even just from like a logistical sense for a Quakes fan, like going to PayPal Park is so much easier than going to, park at Stanford University or Levi's. The game day experience is just not the same. And when you market those kind of marquee matchups, I think it's good to get new fans in the door, but at the same time with Levi's, if our supporter groups can't even take flags, if we're getting limited on like drums, the tifo, the smoke, whatever it be, it takes away the sporting advantage that the Quakes would have otherwise had at PayPal Park. And we've talked about this already, but I think it is worth bringing up that under this division format, I think in terms of what rivalries are for the Quakes, it definitely gets watered down, and is just another example of the MLS just does what the MLS wants, and right. They really don't think about it from the fans' perspective. Because in what other country would a rivalry be split up in this way?
Yeah, especially when it's historic as this one.
Yeah. Anyways, on to the next rumor. Take it away. Yeah,
so in case you guys haven't heard, there are some links. I think Yahoo Sports was where I first read the news that Timo Werner was linked with San Jose Earthquakes, which is a sentence I never thought I would be saying. But obviously it's a player that everybody's, a lot of people that, maybe follow soccer more casually or, European soccer definitely heard of. He's won a Champions League. He was a big player at Leipzig, but I don't really see how it makes sense, to be honest. He's had about 2 minutes this season. It's almost halfway. Christmas marks around halfway in the season for leagues over in Europe. I think one of his biggest strengths was his speed, and from what I've seen, it looks like he had a pretty big injury last year where he missed about 10 games. And from then on, he has not played at all. So, that's a big concern, especially for a player whose biggest strength is his speed. I think those muscular injuries can definitely derail your career. And he's not too old, but for the amount of money that he'd be demanding, and at the moment he is Leipzig's highest paid player, he would definitely be on a DP contract. And a team like Quakes, where the owner is John Fisher, and I just don't see the justification from a wage standpoint as well. Obviously, he'd be on a DP contract. And if he's not going to be consistent, this is MLS. It is a physical league. If he is fit, I could see where his skill set could apply, but I just don't trust the fact that he would be fit. And I feel like it would probably be a headache, because if he can't be, consistently on the field, then I just can't see the justification. Even if he is a big name, even if he does have, prolific seasons in the past.
And for people who don't know, if Timo Werner were to come, how would he be played? Where would he be played? Assuming he's fit and able to play all 34 games, how would you envision him fitting into the system?
Probably a left wing. I would say a left winger, but more like probably like Buddha, I would say, in the sense that he's a inverted winger where, right-footed, but on the left wing maybe comes in and shoots. I've seen him also have decent production with his left foot or for crosses or things like that. I mean, he has Premier League experience, right? So I could see a reality where it works. And also considering the fact that near the end of the season, we had Chicho playing in left wing, which I think that kind of shows, is Buddha that starting caliber will bring you 10 goals and assists a season player? I'm not sure yet. And I definitely know that Chicho's being played out of position, and there's a lot of kind of headaches, I think, for Bruce Arena still. So that's definitely a position that needs to be highlighted, and it's good that we're targeting that position, but I just don't really see Timo Werner specifically being the answer to that just because of the inconsistency. But I think the profile makes sense. I'll say that.
Right. And I do think I read somewhere that his contract with Leipzig was going to be running up during the summer. Do you know anything, or I guess, do you have any thoughts on what if this was more of like a loan and then the Quakes don't have to pay out of pocket per se for a transfer fee, but then we would have to cover his elevated wages? Do you see that happening, or do you think that his wages at Leipzig are just too high for even a club like Quakes to go in on, even given the fact that we've dropped so many players thus far during this offseason?
Yeah, so currently, according to Capology, he makes almost 200,000 euros a week.
Okay, so in terms of yearly wages,
that's about 10 million euros.
Okay.
So either he's going to have to just be okay with, like being paid 5% or something like that, something ridiculous of his current salary. And that's, a loan, maybe it could be, but I just think Leipzig would have to be paying, the majority of his wages. And it would literally just to be, whether he wants to get fit, maybe he has some ideas of maybe squeezing his way into the World Cup squad or something, but I don't know.
Yeah.
He'd have to be pushing it pretty hard or something.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I think I had seen that he was on loan with Spurs for a bit. And so we've also seen the Quakes do this where they get players on loan and then once their contracts are up, they renegotiate. I mean, we saw that with Espinosa, we saw that with Rodriguez. We've seen that time and time again, but yeah, given the numbers that you're saying, a loan probably isn't in the future for us.
I mean, it'd be cool, but I just don't see how it makes sense.
So yeah, that does bring us to the end of all the news roundup, rumors, and confirmed news. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like, subscribe, and let us know what you're thinking about these moves. Would you want to see Timo Werner at the Quakes? Maybe we've convinced you otherwise if the initial headline had you happy, and if that's so, we apologize, but yeah, right now, not feeling it. So yeah, thanks again for watching if you made it this far, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.